Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to our ninth edition of Arts Canteen in Conversation. I am delighted today to welcome Bill Bragin, who is a close ally and friend, and we met a couple of years ago over a couple of occasions in Womex and in Abu Dhabi, and I was lucky enough to visit the Arts Center and the premises, and I had the privilege to be on a tour with some of his fantastic colleagues. So this afternoon, it's going to be a very informal conversation with Bill, who is, we know he's a very busy man, but we managed to grab a 1 hour of his time today and give a little bit of an insight in an intimate conversation about his artistic practice and the massive experience that Bill has gained over the years from being a festival director, a cultural leader, as well as now for the last few years, he's been heading the fantastic art center at the New York Abu Dhabi University. A very warm welcome, Bill.
Cool, thank you, and thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm really glad that you were able to invite me to be part of Arts Canteen tonight.
Thank you so much, Bill. The Art Center at New York University in Abu Dhabi is described as a game changer by the national newspaper a few years ago. I know the Art Center has been an award winner in 2018 and 2019. It is considered to be a pride jewel, if I may say, for a Saidat island in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi is a very fascinating place, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. Its population at the moment is estimated to be 1.5 million people. I was wondering, Bill, if this is a new shift in the directions of the art scene in the United Arab Emirates. What would you say to this?
Yeah, I think that the reason why the Art Center is here, the reason why NYU Abu Dhabi is here, I think really has to do with the larger long-range vision of the leadership of UAE, and they're really looking to grow and transform and diversify the economy and the way that the UAE is sort of connecting with the rest of the world. And Saadiyat Island, where the university is based for the past 6 years now, is a natural island that is about 15 minutes from downtown Abu Dhabi that has been designated as the cultural district. And so we are part of a much larger initiative that also includes the Louvre Abu Dhabi, which opened up about a year after we did, the Sheikh Zayed National Museum, which is under construction right now. Eventually, the Guggenheim project is growing. There is a cultural center called Manarat Al Saadiyat, which has a lot of arts and is home to the Abu Dhabi Art Fair. Berkeley just opened up a campus. Berkeley School of Music has a campus on Saadiyat. So there's this amazing concentration that is part of the transformation. And I think it reflects the larger goals, which is to really develop the creative economy as one of the major prongs. And that's happening all over the country. It's happening in Abu Dhabi, it's happening in Dubai, it's happening in Sharjah and Ras Al Khaimah. It's also a sort of a national goal as well.
Yeah, the last few years definitely has witnessed and seen a huge number of initiatives successfully taking place, and position itself in the United Arab Emirates, whether it's the Dubai Art Fair or whether it is Abu Dhabi Film Festival, etc. So the cultural initiatives has no limit, in fact, in the last few years. And I was wondering, Bill, your journey started in the United States, and then all of a sudden you come to this, a new area of exploration, if you like. And I was always keen to find whether, as you describe it in too many interviews, the Art Center is a bridge to connect all of these local artists and the international artists in too many levels. But what about the audience and your sort of daily attendees of the events from the locals and, of course, the international community who are based in Abu Dhabi? Because I assumed that it's not only open to certain public domain, but there is visitors, there is tourists, there is the students themselves. If you could just give us a little bit more about this, please.
Absolutely. And I think for the purposes of this part of the conversation, I will sort of pretend that COVID doesn't exist, and we're just going to cycle back about a year and a half from now when we were having in-person audiences, and I'll talk about those dynamics because, of course, everything has changed. So we are both a university performing arts center and public-facing performing arts center. The thing about the UAE is that it's incredibly international. The country is home to people from about 200 different nations. And depending on the source, you hear anywhere from 12 to 15% or so of the population are Emirati nationals, and the rest of the population are from all over the world. So it's incredibly international by definition. So unlike many places where the distinction between sort of the local audience and the international audience, it's a very different kind of definition here in the UAE. Roughly, I would say about 15% of our in-person audience comes from the university. All of our tickets are free for students, and we do a lot of work to integrate the visiting artists into the curriculum. We collaborate with faculty not only in the arts and humanities, but in the writing program, in the interdisciplinary core, and whenever it makes sense, we work with public policy and social research, or engineering, or design, or natural sciences. So we really try to penetrate the whole campus. But then 85% of the audience are coming from all over Abu Dhabi, but they're coming from about 2.5 hours away. So people will come from Dubai, which is about an hour and a quarter to an hour and a half away. People will come in from Sharjah or Al Ain or the western region in the Empty Quarter, sometimes even further north into Ajman and some of the northern Emirates. And increasingly, the more we get known internationally, we do have people who are coming in from other parts of the Gulf or from Beirut, or so on. And so that is important to us, is that the development of the cultural sector in Abu Dhabi is also linked to the development of tourism and cultural tourism as one of the goals. And so it's great that we're seeing that we're having that kind of impact. And what we're presenting is work that generally wouldn't be seen in the region if we weren't presenting it. We really
I
are trying
wanted
to fill
to come to this,
gaps.
Bill. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I wanted to come this because the program itself is so diverse and rich. You program, stuff from rapping to traditional, contemporary. Some occasions are probably seen locally as edgy or a little bit even controversial, but this is the space that it is. It's no censorship here in terms of the performances, the gender, the genre, I found it is very progressive practice, the directions you have taken, Bill, which is really an eye-opener for outsiders and for those who don't know the scene in the United Arab Emirates. So you always been very encouraging, energizing force, if you like, in bringing all of this unheard, unseen performances to the center. Can you tell us a little bit more about how do you perceive this? How do you choose your artists? How do you commission your projects? How do you invite all of these artists to take part in the program?
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for noticing, and thank you for asking about 15 questions all at once that I'm going to have to try to find my way to get through. I think personally, in my curatorial history back in New York, where I was working before I moved here. I've for a long time been a multidisciplinary programmer, so presenting music and dance and spoken word and theater. And now that I'm here, we're also presenting film. And a lot of what I'm interested in artistically is sort of hybrid in nature. And it's artists who are working cross form, who are working across cultural traditions, who are working with tradition and contemporary approaches. And I think that was one of the things that attracted me to come to Abu Dhabi, is that is very much in the DNA of the place. You know, it's, I think, the location of the Gulf as kind of a connector between this region, and if you look at the Indian Ocean history between the Gulf and South Asia in East Africa, you look at the connections across through the Levant to North Africa, you look at, you know, the broader routes, you know, from Europe and the Americas to, you know, the African continent and all of Asia. So many people come through here, and what's interesting is that it's not a super assimilationist country. It's a place where people really bring and retain their own identity, but also are creating something new. And what I find is the UAE is very forward-looking, and it is very much constantly thinking about innovation and what to become. And it's a place where change is very fast and constant. So when I started thinking about the programming that I wanted to bring here, first I wanted to reflect the international nature of the place. I wanted to focus on the future orientation of the UAE and the invitation to be part of opening new conversations. So when I'm looking at an artist, one of the main questions, once you establish that there are an infinite number of really wonderful artists in the world who reach the criteria in terms of their excellence, then the question is, what do they have to offer to the community who are living and making their homes here? And how does it relate to the other conversations that are either on people's minds or that people haven't found a way in? And I do think about the arts as an invitation to open a conversation. So we've been presenting a lot of work around climate change and the global climate crisis. We've been presenting work around migration, and we're presenting work around gender issues. We're also presenting work that is pushing the sort of aesthetic boundaries, because there are a lot of people here who have not been exposed to contemporary dance or to postmodern theater or, you know, non-narrative theater, for example. And so we're also trying to just introduce new ideas about what the possibility is with art and bring that into the mix.
Yeah, that's really very helpful, the insights, Bill. And, you know, we have a beautiful film that I would love to share with your permission with the viewers today, which also give a little bit of the background and the celebration all over the years with the Art Center. So my colleague, kindly Aaron, will be able to perhaps play this in the background, and then we can later on stop maybe to some of these images where we can talk about these certain acts here and there. Thank you so much, Aaron. So, you know, in the last few years, you've managed to strike huge numbers of partnerships globally, and I've noticed that given that the Shubbak Festival is approaching us in London, this is also something really interesting to pick up on, and kindly, Bill, if you just give us a little bit also of an idea of how this partnership with Shubbak came along, given that also we are partners and producers in the same festival here in London, which is coming very soon.
Absolutely. Well, I think the first reason the partnership with Shubbak started is because when I moved here from New York, a lot of my reference points we're really focusing on North America and then South America, Central America, and Europe to a degree. And for my own education, I needed to really immerse myself more completely in the contemporary kind of global Arab art scene. And so Shabak is one of the festivals that I started attending as a way to just familiarize myself with who the artists are, who's making work. I was really enthralled by Eckert's curatorial vision and by the way that the festival connected throughout London. I got to see neighbors in London that I hadn't been to before. And so we built a relationship. Eckert has come here a few times. I was lucky that he was here when we premiered a piece by an Emirati playwright. And he was here, I think, for a contemporary dance company from Dubai, led by a Syrian-Palestinian choreographer. And so we ended up in sort of ongoing dialogue, which I think the same reason you and I are talking now. You meet through these professional networks, you build a rapport, you build a trust and a relationship and an interest in one another's work. And so the piece that's going to be premiering at Shabak is a dance film. It's a roughly 30-minute dance film by a Dubai-based filmmaker and breakdancer named Philip Rashid. He goes by Soul Trotter is his hip-hop moniker. And he's been in Dubai. He's Kurdish, Bulgarian, grew up in the Netherlands, has been in the UAE for 8 or 10 years or so. And we got to know him because he started coming to our performances. And we had a live cinema piece that Cronus Quartet did with Sam Green, who's a filmmaker who specializes in live documentary. And he's pretty much the only person in the world who does these sort of live narration, live music on stage, and then beautifully shot footage. Philip came to the performance. He came to a workshop that we had done with Sam. And then, I don't know, a year and a half later or so, he reached out to us and he said, I have this idea for a project I want to talk to you about. It's about the B-boys and B-girls in the UAE. And he came in with this fully fleshed out proposal to basically take Sam's live cinema approach and apply it to the underground hip hop scene in the UAE, where you've got breakers who are coming from all over the region, and it's still very underground. And it's again that question of what people think the UAE is about and what they know and what they haven't seen. I don't think people really think about the underground breakdancing scene in the UAE is not probably your first impression. So we commissioned this piece, and we've been in dialogue with Shabak about whether they want to get involved in the live piece. It was supposed to premiere this past May, and of course, everything got delayed, and some of the dancers left the country during the period of shutdown, couldn't get back in, and so on. One of the dancers is from Beirut, one is from Saudi, someone else is Iraqi from Sharjah, someone else is Bahraini. But they were scattered. We clearly couldn't rehearse in person. And then Shabak said, why don't we come on board as a co-commissioner, but let's create a film version, because film will always be at the center of what ultimately will be a live performance. So what's going to premiere on the night of the 22nd and stay online for about a month is a 30-minute film that is portraits of the sort of the 4 major subjects of the film. Philip is also a spoken word artist, so it has some of his poetry. It's got incredible dance footage that was shot all around the country. And I think it's a great way for us to work and really bring the stories of the UAE to the rest of the world, particularly to organizations like Shabak, who've got such a focus on work from the region.
Yeah, they also are celebrating their 10th anniversary this year. It seems like the 3 of us, the Arts Canteen, you and Shabak, are celebrating these 10 years of incredible giving in the cultural scene in the Arab world and beyond, of course. Bill, one of the really areas I would like to explore tonight, with your permission, of course, is the management of an arts center on that scale. Of course, in your 6 years as a head of the public programming at the Lincoln Center in New York, you had maybe a much different experience, I would gather, But now managing, this center in Abu Dhabi, what are the challenges in a place like this?
I think one of the challenges in a place like this is that what we're doing is really, really new, and there are standards that are sort of common for places that have a really robust performing arts scene that people haven't encountered yet. And so there's sometimes you have to invent or reinvent practices or bring people along. For example, we're part of a large multinational university, and there are all kinds of procurement practices. And good procurement practice means that if you have a vendor, you don't pay the vendor before they've delivered the service. For an arts organization where the artists are relying on the money that they get from their performances to rehearse, to pay their own bills, to cover their flights, to create their costumes, to commission music for their dance piece, so on. There's a different kind of cash flow need, and so deposits are expected. We had to do originally some negotiation to kind of explain why, as soon as we sign a contract with the artist and we've announced their name, we're already getting some of the benefit from them, and that we need to pay them. But that was something that in New York you take for granted. Of course, you're going to pay a deposit, but we needed to sort of explain to a department that had never dealt with performing artists before. Now this is how we're going to do it. For audiences, well, actually, before we go to audiences, I'll talk about staff. Again, because it's a new sector here, in New York, I imagine it's the same in the UK. You keep a small core staff, and then when you're in production, you hire freelancers to fill out your organization. Because this is a new sector, we don't simply have a huge pool of the kinds of freelancers who can support the work that we do. So we have to manage the staff differently. We have more people who are working full time. They have to work across their departments a little bit more. Everybody wears multiple hats, but we don't have the luxury of doing that kind of over-hiring for people who might just come in for a big festival and go away. So I think it's, that is changing. And I think that what's going to happen is this October, the Dubai Expo will open, and will be open for 6 months. And when things like that happen, it brings an enormous amount of new knowledge into the country, and a lot of people who might have come from abroad for that as a specific job and decide they really like it here and want to stay. And so I think that will bring an influx of talent that hopefully we'll also be able to tap into.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. I'm gonna pick a word that you've just mentioned, which is the knowledge. And this knowledge, Bill, as you know, is a very important concept, and the knowledge transfer, I guess, is also part of your vision as an arts practitioner. Do you see that there might be opportunities in the future for the young talents in the United Arab Emirates and the surrounding to be able to come and learn from you and your experience through a design program, or in the center, for young practitioners? Is this something you are prepared to monitor, to advise on, to lead on?
I'm so glad you asked that. It almost feels like I set you up to ask that, and we actually hadn't talked about it. But no. It's something that we are right in the middle of, actually. Knowledge transfer has been a really key idea for the UAE since it was founded 50 years ago, and has been a key to I think the speed at which the country's developed. Within the university, of course, we focus a lot on knowledge transfer, not just in the classrooms, but we have a really robust internship program. And a lot of the interns who are working with us have gone on to professional jobs, many of whom have stayed in the UAE. And they come from all over, and they really feel indebted to the UAE for what their education has meant, and they want to contribute to it. So we're already seeing a number of people who are actually part of our full-time staff now, who graduated from the university, and then interns who are working at the Al Qasimi Foundation or at Aser Avenue in Dubai, or kind of working elsewhere. So we're seeing that happen. We work closely with the Career Development Center, and we have a series of arts chats that we do monthly with our visiting artists, which are often around professional practice. How do you make a living as an artist? What are the things you need to know? We also have workshops and masterclasses in artistic techniques and skills, but we are in the process of rolling out a new program called NAMU, which will be an artist development program. We're right in the middle of the nomination and application process for artists, and it is specifically around professionalizing your skills so that the artists who are working here can develop the skills that will help them to develop their projects, to bring them to stages in the UAE, and also to help them tour it. And so we had an hour-long meeting today, just starting to build out the curriculum and bring the funding in. That is, I think, a critical part of our work, and it's something that really is part of that long-term transformation that I was speaking about earlier.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Thank you so much, Bill. I had the opportunity, and I was privileged to come and visit the center a few years ago. And at one of the evenings, I've been invited to see live our friend Amir Safar, who was leading a fascinating project. But through that building, when I just realized this is not restricted to a show or to a music show or to an office. This is a center that is opening all its doors and windows, if you like, to different kinds of practices, whether it's meeting place, whether it is even there is a gallery space I've noticed on the corridors on the side. There is workshop spaces. So this center is not really a formal gated place. It's an open space for people to come together and to learn through this process. How is this place funded?
So we are part of New York University, which is the idea that drives NYU now is what they call the Global Network University. So there are 3 main campuses in Abu Dhabi, New York, and Shanghai, which are full 4-year universities that students apply to and graduate from, and 11 study abroad sites. NYU Abu Dhabi was really developed in partnership with the Crown Prince's Court here, and it is really a part of that priority of developing the knowledge economy in the UAE and developing the Saudi Cultural District. And so we work really closely in partnership with the government of Abu Dhabi, and then increasingly we're also, as we continue to grow, we're bringing in partners. So we've worked with companies like Mubadala and Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, and we are working very closely with the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. Mission in the UAE. We've done projects with the British Council. We've worked with the French Institute. So a lot of international collaborations, as well as local businesses who really want to invest in the growth of this. What you noticed about the building is great. As part of university, what's really interesting is that all of the artistic disciplines are all under one roof. So the theater program, the film program, the music program, the interactive media program, and the visual arts program are all together in the building. So there are maker spaces and studios and workshops in the building. You've got the classrooms, and then you've got the performance spaces. So you're both kind of making, learning, and presenting all under one roof. And it is that collision, I think, that really speaks to the sort of crossroads idea that is so central.
That's really fascinating. Thank you for the insights. My colleague, the producer here, Aaron, I think he might share also some of the images of the performances in the center. So who is this, Bill?
All right, so this is Kaki King. Kaki is an amazing guitarist that I have a long history with. As you can see, she plays guitar in a non-traditional way. She uses two hands and plays very percussively, almost plays like, she started her career as a drummer and almost plays like a piano. And she's been working a lot with projection mapping. And so in this case, the idea is that the guitar is also a screen. And there was very elaborate projections. You might have seen it in the video as well. Yeah. It was a piece that we commissioned called Data Not Found, which was really looking at the data of everyday life and the sort of the soft data and turning that into material to talk about issues of mortality, to talk about the environment, to tell personal stories. But the idea is that all of our lives sort of are sort of an abundance of different kinds of data that we see and don't see. What was also great with Kaki is we actually worked with a professor named David Risley, who's a digital humanities professor, and he created a semester-long course called The Quantified Self that looked into some of the same images, and then the students imitated Kaki's practice and her approach, where they collected personal data sets and then they transformed those personal data sets into art projects. So again, we're trying to also really open up these conversations that take place across campus. People who were computer scientists, computer science majors who never done any kind of arts projects before in their life got to really sort of experience and unlock that kind of the creativity. It was an amazing experience. It's a beautiful piece.
The reason why I brought this or suggested to bring some of these images, because I know how far you can go with your progressive thinking, Bill, and it is a fascinating fact that your program is always very inviting and not only close to a certain genre, as I mentioned earlier, but very inclusive as well. Aaron, can we see something else? What about this one?
All right, so this was from when we first opened our Red Theater, which is our largest indoor venue. It's a 700-seat proscenium space. I think it's probably the finest venue in the country, alongside Dubai Opera. That's another great shot of it. Well done, Aaron. So that was a collaboration between City Company. Yeah, so Anne Bogart, who's an incredible director, has a company called City Company, and that was a collaboration with Bang on a Can, the contemporary new music organization. Julia Wolf was a composer, she won the Pulitzer Prize, I believe, for the recording of that piece. And it is a piece that uses an American legend, the legend of John Henry, and had 4 different librettists retell the story. And so it was really a way to look at the way that artists can look at the same incident from multiple perspectives, reinvent it. And as part of that same residency, Bang on a Can did a concert of their own. We had commissioned a piece from Mohammed Firuz, the Emirati composer. And then they also did a 2-day music workshop for local musicians to open up sort of their approaches to making contemporary music. So I think it really captured a lot of the different ideas that we were talking about around knowledge transfer in particular, as well as bringing work that was it's a very different kind of vision of contemporary opera.
That's really amazing. I should look up for the details after the session, definitely. One of the questions just came now, Bill, is from the audience. The question, how do you engage with the indigenous artistic community in Abu Dhabi?
So we have a number of things. I think one of the most important ways that we engage with the local artist community is through our partnership with Rooftop Rhythms. Rooftop Rhythms is a spoken word poetry slam open mic that predated us. They've been around for 9 years now. They were moving around to different nightclubs and cafes around the city. When I got here, everybody I talked to said, you need to meet Dorian Rogers, who runs Rooftop. It's the best thing that's going on. And he really created an amazingly vibrant community. At some point, they needed a venue. Their main venue had double booked, and so we brought it to the campus. It was an amazing fit, and then we made it part of our season. And that is a place where I think we find, because poetry is so culturally valued, it really connected with the local community, connects with a lot of young people. So we get probably our strongest local artist community as well as audience. And then that becomes a way for us to identify people that we want to work with on other projects. For UAE National Day every year, we do an event that is a celebration of home and heritage that is both poetry as well as music. And so we have a lot of local artists on there. And increasingly we're commissioning work. So there's an Emirati woman named Rima Wanhali who had been part of Hekaya, our National Day event. She's also a student here, and she had brought in some of her poems into her theater class. And Joanna Settle, who runs our theater program and is an amazing director, said, this is a talent that I really want to develop, and not as a professor and student, but as two artists. And so they ended up developing a piece called Al-Rahil, Departure, which was a 4-person play about the experience of young Emirati women. It was four women, all in their late teens, early 20s, in English and in Arabic, really sort of portraying what life is like and the way they sort of toggle between multiple languages, multiple identities, and the different phases of womanhood. And that's a piece that, again, we're hoping that ultimately we'll do some touring and really also give audiences internationally some insight into what people are writing and thinking about here.
Yeah, that would be really an incredible opportunity for us also to see and experience. As you know, I'm always keen on exploring and finding more about the role of women in arts and culture in general. So I think the scene has changed, as we all know, in the recent few years in the United Arab Emirates and beyond in the Arab world. And talking about the Arab world, Bill, I mean, the Arab Spring has brought a massive and sheer numbers of artists all around. How do you personally and professionally see this movement at the moment?
Well, I think that, it's the reality of the moment, especially in the COVID moment when we're not traveling the world, and mobility has always been an issue, right? I've been at the Edinburgh Fringe, for example, for the Arab Focus that DCAF has really developed with them, and there was something like a third of the artists and their companies couldn't get into the country because human mobility is a huge issue. I think because people have really gravitated to online, we're actually able to make some more of those connections, and I'm able to discover work that I might not have because it was being performed at a time that I was busy or at a festival that I didn't attend or so on. And so I think that I think there's a lot of recommending of artists. I think building those personal networks has been really critical. Being in conversation with people like you, with DCAF, with Marsam in the UK as well, who we collaborated with. And I had a call just yesterday with the Arab American Museum in Dearborn in Michigan in the US. So I think we're all kind of really, people are very generous with information, and people are generous with recommendations for artists that they think are doing important, meaningful, and high quality work.
Interesting. Also, the scene has been struggling recently with the livelihood of the artist in general. And I suppose with what I really want to bring here is something I've noticed in one of your interviews when you talked about how important for someone to pick up a vinyl or a record or an object that is physically owned by yourself. And it's a way of supporting this artist by contributing to his livelihood and the copyrights or etc. etc. So how do you feel about this whole world now is in the cloud, and this digital projections all over the place? This might be an issue for some of the artists and the music scene and the cultural scene in general.
So I will say I'm one of those people who during COVID started buying a lot of vinyl on Bandcamp directly from the artist. Even though I had access to all the music online, I wanted to support the artist. I wanted to support the maker. About 5 years ago, the first independent record store in the UAE, the Flip Side, opened in Dubai at Aser Avenue, and I was there for the opening night, and I bought a couple of local productions, some dub and electronic music, and then I started, every time I would go to Dubai, I'd buy some records. But I didn't actually have a turntable here. So then after a couple of months of buying records, then I had to buy a turntable. So they've gotten a lot of my money. And Shadi Magala, who runs it, is Egyptian, grew up in Abu Dhabi, and he's become a friend. And so I think that one of the things that we're all realizing right now, when people are really finding their livelihood struggle, is that you need to vote with your wallet when you can. If you're in a position to support the artists, you support the artists. I think a lot of people have been trying to make content available for free online because it was such a lifeline during lockdown periods and quarantine, and people value that. But at the same time, for those of us who can, do pay what you will, who can contribute, I think it's important to. From an institutional side, I think it's also important that we've really continued to find ways to maintain our commitment to artists. Artists who are supposed to come here and do in-person performances, we turn them into online performances, but maintain our full fee rather than canceling and invoking sort of a force majeure clause. We've done a lot of work to commission, because even if we can't present in-person work right now, when we reopen to live performance, we're now able to start building a pipeline of new work that has been created in this moment. And I think emotions are really heightened. We're dealing with all kinds of extraordinary problems in the world. And people have got a lot of things they want to make art about. And we want to really support the artists and make sure that they have the funding to keep doing the work and don't only exist from one performance to the next performance to the next performance. And so I think paying commissions for the creative process, to me, has been really central to sort of our response in the past year and a half.
That's wonderful. That's really inspiring, and I think it's a very important statement from your side, Bill, as one of the leading figures who've been through this all of your life. I think this is really very refreshing, actually, to have these comments and facts from your side. I wanted to divert a little bit the conversation here and ask about what has got you into all of this, Bill. We know that there is a little bit of a music interest as a musician yourself, how you started, but I'm really fascinated. I'm sure my audience and the whole world would be also fascinated to find out more about this.
So on my Twitter bio, I think was when I first started using it. I have my bio, which is imposing his taste on friends and strangers since 19 whatever. And it's a little bit of a joke, and it's a little bit true. Ever since I was a kid, I've been passionate about music. My father's a professional trumpeter and a music educator, so he always taught instrumental music, and he played in the wedding and bar mitzvah circuit, and he gave private lessons. My mother was an amateur pianist. There was always a piano in the house. Music was always really present. And I grew up playing, and then I grew up collecting records and having friends over and saying, oh, you need to listen to this. And then before that record was done, like, oh, you need to listen to this. And I essentially am sort of the same person that I was when I was 14 or 15, where first and foremost, I'm a fan. I get excited about something and I want to share it. And as I encounter more art in different forms, whether it's music from anywhere in the world of any conceivable style, or it's a dance piece, or it's a theater piece, or it's a spoken word artist, or it's a film, I now have an outlet to take that enthusiasm and to share it. And I don't do it necessarily as an expert. I don't think of myself as an expert. I've seen a lot of work, and
you are very modest, Bill.
I think I am very well connected to a lot of experts, and I am able to be in a role where I can really refer to and draw from other people's expertise. I know what I respond to. I can sort of test it with my colleagues about its importance and its legitimacy. But I don't think you need to be an expert to be in the audience. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by contemporary arts, and they think, oh, I don't know about jazz. I don't know about abstract painting. Therefore, I can't enjoy it. My first answer is, your immediate response is totally valid. You'll see it differently if you learn more about the background of the history or who the artist is, but it doesn't mean that your immediate visceral response is not valid. And I think I try to do my work as a presenter from a similar basis.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much for the answer. And what was the instruments you played when you were young?
So I grew up, like my dad, playing trumpet. When I was in, I guess, high school, I also sang in the chorus, and then I started singing in rock bands. When I went to university, I sang in an a cappella group. I was singing in a rock band. Our drummer didn't come back after the summer break, so I ended up playing drums. And I'm not a good musician. You know, I don't like to practice, I think, ultimately. But I also think that my taste is more important than my own skills as a musician. And so I would rather let people who are much more skilled than me to actually kind of create the art, and I can just bring my enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yeah. And through this journey, of course, Bill, you've been advisors, you've been, a major influential in the scene when it comes to festivals, to conferences, institution collaborations. What would be really the advice that you would give today to any arts practitioners who is emerging or are at the beginning of their career or mid-career, if you like? What is the advice that Bill can give to these artistic practitioners?
I think for me, one of the most valuable things has been the building of networks and the building of relationships and generosity. So I was part of a group that created a coalition in North America of performing arts presenters who were mostly organized around world music. It was really me and a guy named Derek Andrews from Toronto, who works with Mondial Montreal and Global Toronto and a bunch of other things. He was at Harbourfront at the time. He was really well networked throughout Canada. I was really well connected in the US. And we started bringing people together to share information, to share booking ideas, to share a lot of the early phase ideas that usually you don't share with the people who might be your competitors. And creating this culture of openness. And we learned so much from each other, and 20 some odd years later, we're still in regular contact with an every other week conference call. Just this year, due to COVID, along with my colleague Lindsay Bostwick at the Art Center and Maya Allison, who runs the Art Gallery at NYUAD, we co-founded a similar kind of network across the UAE with people working in the performing arts, in the visual arts and museum space, and in the cinema space. All again, sharing what we're experiencing. Initially, it was a response to COVID and that immediate shock and crisis. But what we realized is that we're all interested in growing the artistic ecosystem. So being in a network together, sharing information, and finding ways to really be more open with your practice, it strengthens everybody. So I think that Still, you'll have rivals, and you'll have people who you might be trying to get the same audience to come to an event on the same night, and that doesn't go away. But if you're competing with people who you're friends and your colleagues and your collaborators, it's a really great way to do it, and that openness, I think, strengthens everybody's work.
That's beautifully said, Bill. I mean, I always knew you are a believer in the collective work, and what is nice here is you acknowledge there is competition in the scene, but in what I gathered from your words is it's also complementing the work of each other when you have these bright ideas coming along, and these networks is evolving by all of these institutions and artists and the groups of those who care about this scene. I think we learned the lesson in the last few years, and we can't work all the time solely and independently alone. We need this kind of support, if you like. And I think this is really something very, very admiring of what you said. I'm just going to take one more question here, if I may. Have you experienced other forms of creative freedom in Abu Dhabi? What would you like to bring back and develop in the USA?
So before I answer that, I'm just going to acknowledge the question. There's another question that I don't know if we'll have time to get to, but I see somebody who's no, it's fine, but it's someone who's referencing my roots in ACS, and I'm realizing that this is the alternative concert series that I ran when I was in college at Haverford. So I've got a friend from college who's watching, so I don't know who you are, but thank you for tuning in.
It's great that there is a question anyway.
Yeah,
sorry not to spot it.
But in terms of other forms of creative freedom, I think what's really great here is because the audiences are so different, and many of the audiences are encountering the kinds of work that we're presenting for the first time. I've really learned to take nothing for granted, and I've learned to really trust the audiences and trust that people are open-minded and willing to engage. This is also the first job that I've had that is part of a university, and the other question was actually about curricular engagement, which has been really meaningful to me. When I was at Lincoln Center or at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater or Central Park Summer Stage, in either a nightclub or festival, it was generally the artists come, they perform one performance, and they go home. I started doing some commissioning when I was at Summer Stage and kept that going to have a little bit more ongoing engagement. But what I've really learned here is developing these long-time collaborations with artists around commissioning, around teaching, getting the artists into the classroom, into the community, so that the impact is really multifaceted. The artists also know where they've come to. They really get to meet the community. It takes away the anonymity that can often be part of being a touring artist on the road. So that, I think, in terms of what I would bring back to my practice in the US, I think has been really central.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Bill. Also, there is a comment from Lena Traki. She said, thank you for reviving the art scene in Abu Dhabi, which is a great compliment of her. Thank you very much, Lena, on behalf of Bill, encouraging artists and enlighten the audience to appreciate different art scenes through collaborations. So it seems like, you are very well positioned to be leading on this incredible art center. And this conversation can go forever, but unfortunately, we've limited ourselves to 1 hour. But, Bill, I am very privileged, and I've been one of these lucky people who had a side conversation with you a few times in Beirut and in Copenhagen, and I very much looking forward to keep this relationship between Arts Canteen and the other collectives, as you mentioned. But I may ask also my colleague Aaron if he can bring on the screen the handles for the art center, so people knows where to go and find out more information about Bill and this incredible institution that we are very proud of. And the last word is for you, Bill, here.
Well, I just want to start by saying thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the great conversation, and it's great that we built a relationship. And I really I love the aspects of my work that you pulled out. I think are the things that clearly are things that really move me, and I'm grateful for that. And I think it's important to also say that I also get to do this work because the arts community of the UAE really welcomed me in. And so, people like the Abu Dhabi Music and Art Foundation, ABAF, who do the Abu Dhabi Festival, DCT, the Department of Culture and Tourism, and the Friends at the Louvre. We're a really close-knit community here and in Dubai and across the country. And so, I really do see my work as part of this sort of this larger network of people who are all really growing, people here long before I was here, and all of us working together to plant seeds for the future. And I think that building the relationships between the Arts Center and Arts Canteen and continuing that is also part of that process. So thank you for a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you. Very kind words from your side. Before we go, I just also want to encourage people to go and visit if they can, if they are locally in the United Arab Emirates, to go and visit the center and say hello in person to Bill, of course, and his wonderful team. And also, fingers crossed for this pandemic to be over very soon, and we can go back to sort of normality if circumstances allow. And also, a big thanks to all of our viewers who joined tonight. We are so sorry we can't take much questions today, but hopefully there will be more of this conversation. Bill, Bragin, thank you so much for your time and for your contribution, and thanks to Aaron and Ribal in the back scene for their incredible and support with this event tonight. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Bill. Bye-bye.